items on the agenda today, and just before we start, I'll ask Mr. Haswell.
Thanks, Chairman. There appears to have been some confusion with the papers going out. I can apologise to those members for any inconvenience when they didn't get the papers. The first time we sent them out, we used the Pony Express from Stranraer, and that clearly didn't work. The second time, I thought it was being smart, I put the first-class post. Some members apparently didn't get them through the post. We're reviewing how we go about the thing, and it will be resolved for the next meeting. In the meantime, please accept my apologies for the fact that some of you didn't get the papers on time.
Mr. Haswell, the Sederunt, an apology.
Thank you, Chairman. 19 members present, with apologies from Councillor McClung and Councillor Stitt. Thank you.
Okay. Any declarations of interest? No. Minutes of the meeting of 19th February. Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Minor correction, Chair. I would suggest.
Page
3, sir. Members Alistair Gerris and George Prentice, we didn't express an interest. I'd like to think we express an interest in all items on the agenda. We declared an interest.
What you meant was you expressed your disinterest, right? Fine. Moving on. Thanks for that, Alistair. Item 4, which is Community and Customer Services Business Plan 2015-16. This report submits a CCS Business Plan 2015 through 2018. It will be the subject of change, but it represents the way in which the Council will take forward those services which form part of the plan. It provides details of the challenges and opportunities affecting the service and sets out key performance indicators which we will be able to monitor. As will be seen, the business plan reflects the Council's priorities and commitments. It also provides some extremely useful statistical information in areas such as staffing and finance. I should draw your attention to the minor amendments proposed to KPI targets for number of attendance swim pools and indoor leisure and sports facilities, and also amends the end date for the scuba installation. As we are all aware, the business plan was subject to previous member involvement, most recently the well-attended seminar held on the 17th of March. It should therefore be a no surprises document. And I think that with a fair bit of input by members at that seminar, so I'm hopefully not going to have to go back over the same ground again. However, we have all the senior management team in the department here, and they'll be happy to answer any questions. Director?
I don't think of anything further to add, Chairman. We're happy to answer any points which members may raise, or any queries or any questions. As you say, we presented the business plan to members in seminar format about a fortnight, 3 weeks ago.
Okay. Members got any questions? Councillor Geddes?
Thanks, Chair. Paragraph 3.3, sir. Now, talking about the business plan may be subject to amendment in light of members' comments on the end-of-year performance report, which is to be presented to this committee, Chair, on the 16th of June, along with the detailed budget allocations and updated staffing information, and that the final business plan will therefore be published on our Council's website by the 30th of June. I would have thought it might have been worthwhile, sir, before publishing it, bringing back, to this committee and giving members the opportunity to have an input into, what will essentially be the finalised plan at that stage.
Don't have an issue with that, sir. It's certainly no part of the budget, the business planning process that members previously agreed, but if members want a final copy of the business plan, I'm quite happy to supply it.
Merely a suggestion, Chair. As always, I'd be interested to hear what yourself and colleagues think. Thank you.
That's no problem for the Director. Happy to go along with that if other members are happy. We agree to that. Any other questions? Councillor Maitland?
Page 38 of 114, 28 of the business plan. Concerning providing looked after children and young people with opportunities to participate. The outcome is that looked after children, young people and care leavers have access to information. I just sort of wonder, Chairman, whether that's really sufficiently directional. And I wonder if somebody could help me over what is actually anticipated to happen there. Because simply giving children information probably is not really what we're adequate to what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to update members that CCS are taking a very positive part as part of the corporate parenting subgroup that's been established through the council. And this was an area that was identified by Looked After Children as being something they would be really interested in terms of access to leisure and sports and cultural activities and facilities free of charge. So this is what we're taking forward. There will be dialogue with our social work colleagues in terms of ensuring that the families and the Looked After Children are aware of the opportunities. So it won't just be a direct, if you like, contact with the young people. It will be done through that corporate parenting group in a proactive way to ensure that they're aware of the opportunities that we've made available, Chair.
So thanks, Chair. It's not so much a question, but more of a remark on the work that's been carried out so far with CCS. And I'd like to place on record my thanks for the amount of work that CCS staff are actually doing for the commemoration events around the region. Certainly looking at Quintonsill, Nithsdale, Wigtown, and all the work that's being carried out on behalf of the World War 100 commemorations. I think Dumfries and Galloway has been put on the map. And I just wanted to place on record my thanks to the staff that are helping in that area.
I think we'll have that minuted. There's thanks to the staff for the good work they've been doing on all these commemorative events. Andy?
Thanks, Chair. Just going back to the point Jane made actually about the Looked After Children, I'm looking at the timescale for the KPI. Does that actually tie in with the timescale that was agreed at the Champions Board that three of us in the room here today were actually are members of? Because I'm sure we made a commitment to them to get that kind of information quicker than 31st of March 2016. And I'm just wondering, because this has probably been written before that meeting, and does that need to be looked at or changed?
Chair, I'll double check with the team when I get back to the office, but my understanding is that these opportunities are being made available for these young people almost with immediate effect, and maybe that timeline is in regard to the monitoring and the evaluation, but certainly my understanding, Councillor Ferguson, is that these opportunities are available as we speak.
Robert?
Yeah, Chair, and I welcome the report and indeed the business plan, but there are a number of areas that I think it's, in terms of our reporting on a 6-monthly basis, and reference has been made of Looked After Children, but it's about child protection, as it says here. It doesn't only say Looked After Children, but it's all children, and where the business plan will then tie into the GIRFEC agenda, and GIRFEC, and I've had this discussion with many of the officers in terms of, on page 6 it refers to child protection, and then on page 8, housing options, and indeed on many occasions this has to do with where perhaps our plan ties in and we become collaborative service, working with all the agencies in bringing forward information that the business plan reflects. And John and I has had the discussion on the strategic needs group and how it operates, and whether indeed it is operating to the maximum efficiency. So it's the reporting back of these issues, not just that it's a business plan, but it's an effective business plan working for the community and the people that we serve. And in that respect, Chair, when we look at the external funding unit, and reference has been made as to the work of the Department in Community and Customer Services, and it's, in our area we have compared the services in the South Mackers against those of the RINs, and I would hope that in this there will be an equity of service, or at least that moving forward, that we are seeing this and that we are maximising the drawdown of external funding and how we monitor that on a reporting basis in terms of performance. And again, to two of those points, Chair, where it says about improved customer focus, a lot of our meetings at Area Committee are to a business meeting where the community are not entirely engaged with us. So within the business plan, I would hope that there is a greater focus on the area committee in terms of how the community engage with us at an area committee level to see how we do improve the services that we are delivering to the people we serve. So I don't particularly see that strongly coming forward. I see different words to it, but how do we improve the effectiveness of area committees in terms of how we're looking at these performance targets and that we are delivering the service that the people want, given the contraction and of the services that we are already involved in. And my last point is to EMIS in terms of the performance reporting that's done, and we hear of hitting 80s and maybe even some heading to the 90s. It's how do we focus on the 10% of the services that are not being delivered to us as elected members, in terms of how is these services in poor performance of the 10%, how do we take those forward to improve on the delivery to the elected members, Chair, within the business plan?
Thanks, Chair. I'll maybe deal with the elected member inquiry service question first. We've now got a well-established performance system in place that each director, as part of their monthly performance reports with the Chief Executive, get a breakdown of the number of inquiries, both elected member inquiries and community council inquiries that their part of the business has dealt with. Not just the subject matter, but how they performed in terms of timescales and the quality of those responses. Members, as you'll be aware, are also asked whether they were actually satisfied with the response, and if they're not, officers are encouraged to get back to that member to say, well, what is it you still feels lacking, and we try and address it. There will be an annual performance report and improvement plan specifically on EMES coming back to this committee in August, which gives an overview of how we performed in the last 12 months and what some of the key areas of improvement that we've identified need to be moving forward, and certainly ongoing staff training in terms of how individual officers respond to inquiries is one of the things that's been highlighted. And what we've tried to do is be as proactive as possible. We've been round management teams. We've given exemplars of good practice at where a member has actually received a very, very good quality response, and given that as an example to an officer, perhaps to support and mentor them moving forward. So hopefully it's an improving situation, but acknowledge that there's still always room for improvement. The other issue in terms of area committee engagement, I think that is just one indicator. It's just one part of a far bigger picture as to how our council engages and works with our communities. I think for those members of the public that attend area committees, the statistics are very promising in terms of they may not always like what they hear, but I think it's above 90% feel that they've had their voices heard, which I think is the important thing. The council is also committed to take forward a public involvement strategy, and members will be involved in that process as well. So that's basically how the council are going to put the public members of the community at the centre of our consultation and engagement process. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I'm referring to page 27 of 114, item 10, the monitoring and reporting. And I can understand this is the historical reporting process, but a suggestion, should we not have a box at least, or 2 lines in here about the Integrated Joint Board, because they will have a role in this particular, I'm thinking of strategic housing, leisure and sport and public health, that are all covered by you. And I appreciate that the general departmental reporting to area committees will be different from the very dedicated reporting under the new IGB process. So I'm not suggesting we put any timescales in, because that's obviously to be discussed, but suggestion is we should actually have that in there as If it's a 3-year plan, it will be enforced by halfway through this plan.
I think that's correct, sir. There will require to be a reporting mechanism to the joint board. At the moment, we're not just exactly certain how that's going to work. This report will be due to come back to members in about a year's time, and at that point I think we'll need to add issues in. By that time we will have a communities department established. There may be changes required to the report, and at that point I think that Councillor Ferguson is quite correct. At that point we would address reports to the joint board insofar as is necessary. But I do acknowledge that there will be that coming forward. I'm just not sure what the mechanism will be yet, and we've left this very much as a working document. It is a dynamic document. It will change as time moves on. It may very well change in June, July of this year, and then moving forward when it's reviewed. It'll also be the subject of reports to area committees, which may influence some of the stuff that we bring out in the business plan and in the monitoring arrangements. So it's very much a dynamic document. We take that on board, Councillor Ferguson.
Graeme Nicholl.
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 61. It's the figures for the number of attendees at swimming pools. We're projecting an increase or target of 45,500 more than for this current year, and the next by 2017-18, 45,500 more attendances at swimming pools, and the next one attendances at indoor sports and leisure facilities, an increase of 80,000 people. I admire the optimism, and I hope we can arrive at that. But what was the evidence to behind and giving us justification for those figures?
Yeah, the amendment which was circulated to members is absolutely based on the continued assessment of performance, particularly in regard to DG1 now being unavailable and the temporary swimming pool performance and indeed the Lorburn Hall. So those figures have been reflected and projected moving forward. But I suspect, Councillor Nicholl, that based on that evidence, we'll continue to update members, and where we need to change, we'll bring reports back because of the temporary nature of those facilities and that provision. They are subject to significant sort of fluctuation based on a lack of historical numbers as we've had in previous facilities. So that's the reason why we've amended the template thus far, and we've brought that back to members, but we'll keep that under review basically just because of the temporary nature of the facilities that we have in place at the moment. But as members are aware, Lorburn Hall particularly, working very, very well indeed, and the temporary pool, all given that it's a much smaller facility than we had previously.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually a question relating to, in terms of the key functions of the department, CLD is, we're the lead on that in terms of it being a statutory instrument. But in a couple of places throughout the report, we seem to be sort of focusing more on the CLD service rather than the CLD lead role in the region. For example, page 52 or 62 of 114, and it's just so we don't sort of create a rod for our own back, but number participating in CLD service activities, and this is a target that we're trying to look at, and it's increased the number of participants in CLD service activities. Now, from the preamble at the start of the actual business plan, what we seem to be setting out to achieve is a strategic lead in CLD service across different agencies, etc., where we're looking at where people are most in need, as it were. But we're meant to be the lead rather than the deliverer, I would suspect. I'm just sort of wanting to clarify that ambiguity between the service and the strategy. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to, I think it comes down to definition. The Dumfries and Galloway Council has got the lead to take forward the statutory instrument on behalf of our region involving strategic community planning partners. And within the council, that responsibility has fallen to the Community Learning Development Service. The KPIs that are detailed in the business plan are specific to the council's CLD service. So in other words, what is within our control to actually influence and achieve, as opposed to the wider sector, albeit very often it requires close working with partnerships, etc. I think moving forward, that definition will become easier as we go into the new departments. It will not necessarily be called the CLD service moving forward, but that's certainly the distinction as things stand at the moment. Quite happy to tighten up on some of the sections of the business plan if that helps, just to clarify respective roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, Chair. I really got two of the questions answered. I didn't get the two. I know Harry's a dynamic officer, but there were two others, and he's partially answered my third question, and that was on CLD in terms of their role in the business plan against the external funding unit. So that we are drawing down on maximum external funding and how that's going to impact. Likewise, in terms of the equity of service between, just using as a comparison, the RINs and the MACAs, so that we can see that the service rolling out does recognise good practice, and indeed that it's reflected throughout the whole of Dumfries and Galloway region. And similar to what I referred to as the child protection, GAFEC and our housing, welcoming again the strategic needs group and the homes for D&G, the common housing register, how we improve on that service, and on reporting back on the performance of the service to the area committees. Could have some assurances on both, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I'll maybe deal with the external funding. I think the external funding unit, albeit based in Dumfries, plays an important region-wide role, and is really integral to the way CCS develops its business. CLD supports a whole range of different groups across Dumfries and Galloway, and I think I'm confident in saying that within the Wigtonshire context that Councillor Scobie's referring to, I think they're very well served in terms of the amount of external funding that has been drawn in. And I think across the 4 area committee areas, there's a whole range of very good examples of whereby groups don't just apply for area committee funding, but they're encouraged and supported to use area committee funding very often as a last resort, but also to bolster and draw down external funding. And I think that approach, for example, has paid dividends in terms of our heritage lottery funding, priority status area. Whilst that doesn't necessarily guarantee that external funding is going to be brought into Dumfries and Galloway, I think the evidence is that that's exactly what has happened, and that's been down to proactive work by the external funding unit, and has had an impact across the whole region. It's perhaps something that area committees want to get more detail on when we come back to them to report on local performance, just in terms of external funding attracted and how that has impacted the area committee's discretionary budget, which I think is something that's already been decided as part of the budget process, that we need to be smarter about how area committees focus their investment moving forward.
Thanks, Chair. Pages 57, 67 and 58, 68, sir, of the papers. If you accept the axiom, Chair, that the most valuable resource that this authority has is its employees, there's a couple of boxes there which, I'm not particularly happy or reassured with. First one, Chair, is the level of positive engagement recorded in employee surveys, and your outcome there, improved understanding of staff satisfaction and knowledge of gaps requiring action. Fundamentally important. And when you look at it, sir, the target, the outcomes over the next 3 years, firstly, I happen to feel that 75% seems to be a bit low, and secondly, I'm not particularly thrilled to the staticness of this. I would like to think that we should be looking at ways of improving that. That's the first point. If you go over the page, Chair, to the second top box, which percentage of council staff who know how their job contributes to council priorities and values, and you're talking there, sir, about your targets in the far right column, over the next 3 years, 80%. Or put another way, Chair, 1 in 5 of our employees doesn't know how their job contributes to council priorities and values. And I think that says rather a lot about Dumfries and Galloway Council as an employer of staff, and it's not a statistic, firstly, that I feel reflects very much credit on us. And secondly, again, it doesn't build in any, any possibility of enhancing that percentage over the next 3 years, Chair, this year included. Can I have a response to that, please?
In terms of the level of positive engagement, sir, we've based these figures on the outturn that we've had historically. You can engage with staff, but getting responses to employee surveys, historically it's always been around the 75% mark. We can certainly try to achieve more than that, but we try to put realistic targets in there. I don't want to appear to be disparaging, but there are a cadre of staff who won't respond to these things, no matter how much you encourage them. And I wouldn't want to force staff to respond to these things. They're very much a voluntary thing. They depend a lot on staff's intentions, staff's ability, staff's time, etc., etc. So we've gone for a 75%. I think that's basically across the council. We can certainly, our aim would be to achieve higher than that. And I think in terms of the last 2 or 3 years, CCS staff have moved forward, and there is much greater staff engagement in terms of meetings every quarter with all staff are offered the opportunity of meeting the senior management team every quarter. We have team meetings on a regular monthly basis. So we are endeavouring to engage our staff as much as possible. I think that's a recorded figure, and we've been realistic in putting that figure down. In terms of the percentage of council staff who know how their job contributes to council priorities and values, I agree with Councillor Geddes. I would like that to see that being 100%. Again, we've been working from a fairly low base, and we're moving forward. I would hope that we'll achieve more than the 80%, but we felt that was a realistic target to put in. Members wish to put a higher target in. I'm quite happy to endeavour to achieve that target.
Councillor Geddes.
Thanks, Chair. I'm grateful to Mr. Hassel for the response. I'm not suggesting for one moment that everybody assembles in the car park every morning and, led by the Chief Executive, to sing the authority hymn. Though it seems to work in certain organisations, but there's a serious point to all of this, because at the end of the day, unless you can win the hearts and minds of your most valuable resource, we're always going to have problems in changing the culture of the organisation about which we talk guy often. And as I say, this is not meant to be a criticism of anyone, Chair, but I think certainly in the second box, I think we've got to be more ambitious. I do appreciate what Mr. Hassel was saying. Councillor Nicholl mentioned earlier on, maybe we're being a wee bit optimistic. Here am I, as it were, saying maybe we're not being sufficiently challenging. It's not an easy set of parameters to arrive at. I'd be the first to admit that. But that doesn't stop us trying, Chair, and I think we've got to recognise this and develop it as appropriate, sir. I'm grateful to you.
I think we'd all agree with you here, Councillor Geddes. I think we should be aiming for 100%. But not only in this department, I think we've got the Policy and Resources Committee meeting coming up, which you and I and certain others are on in the next couple of weeks.
Intention is that once we've received the stakeholder and customer feedback from some detailed survey work, that we will be consulting at area committee level. That was the commitment made through the Housing Subcommittee. And then there's going to be a report going back to the Housing Subcommittee with the findings and recommendations of that review. And I think that will pick up a lot of the points that Councillor Scobie made in terms of improved monitoring and reporting of outcomes through the CHR. In terms of the wider point around the Joint Integration Board, I think the answer goes back to the answer that the Director gave in terms of making sure that once there is a clear understanding of how the integration arrangements work over the next 12 months, then this business plan needs to link in with the outcomes of that piece of work. But obviously there are specific issues in relation to the equipment and adaptations function being transferred to the integration arrangements, and also much wider strategic links around particularly adult and older people's housing and housing needs that need to be considered as part of that integration arrangement. And we've identified in the business plan the requirement to produce a housing contribution statement, which will form part of the strategic plan for the integrated board. So there is a big chunk of work to do there, but we are now taking that forward with health and social care colleagues. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going back to page 67 of 114 again, and over the page. It's about the PDRs and the 95%. there's two asterisks there, and I can't find any explanation what the asterisks are for. They obviously mean something. But I'm taking on board the director's comments made earlier about the number of staff or percentage of staff who know how their job contributes to council priorities. Actually, a disconnect here, because surely those two figures should be the same, because to do their PDR, central to that is knowing what your role is within the council.
I don't disagree with that, sir. I'll look at that again and tie these two together. Can somebody tell me what the asterisks are for? I've forgotten.
I think, Chair, it reflects that it's a corporate indicator.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Much appreciated. It's actually to do with the customer strategy and the channel shift programme in terms of how we deliver our customer service. So, although I appreciate there's a lot of work going on in terms of web, phone, face-to-face, all the rest of it, I'm just really asking, how can we as elected members monitor how well that programme is actually achieving according to its strategy, and where can we get a clearer sight of what that strategy is?
Thanks, Chair. There's been a huge amount of work done over the last 6 to 12 months on what we refer to as the customer strategy, which, if you like, is the overarching way that our council is going to transform the way we do business with our customers, both internal and external. Out of that, there has been a programme which is referred to the channel shift programme, and channels are basically the way the council can interact with the public. So it could be face-to-face, it could be via telephone, it could be via social media, or it could be via web. And obviously, there's a huge push at the moment from the public that they want to do more and more interactions with the council via web in the comfort of their own home at the time that suits them. As part of the process to involve elected members, there has been a channel strategy seminar given to each of the 4 area committees. I think Annandale and Estiles is possibly next week. So it should be in the diary. And what we're currently working on is to do what we refer to as metric gathering, which looks at a snapshot across all of the council about how we currently work and relate to members of the public. So we've taken snapshots of face-to-face inquiries, telephone, contacts via email, etc. And we're also doing quite a comprehensive customer survey to capture all of that information, and that will then influence how we're going to deliver services moving forward. Part of that is going to be the development of a new council website, and once all that information is pulled together, we're intending to come to committee to outline to members exactly what it is we're proposing and why. I think it's a really exciting project because I think it is really going to transform the way that the public interact with ourselves. We're also using, for example, the call centre, which is open 24/7 to deal with more business, so you don't have to wait to traditional office hours to get an answer from the council. You can ask a certain number of questions at that stage. So what we'll do is we'll bring back a report specifically on the issue of customer strategy and channel shift to ensure members are fully aware of what's going on.
I've got only one more. I did say final question. Councillor Maitland.
Thank you, Chairman. It's on page 55, and it's with respect to the creation of a charitable company to operate 3 leisure and sport facilities. I'm simply wondering whether that is an adequate reflection of the decisions that were made following the budget. I don't see the investigation into options which are to come forward to us. So I just wonder if we could have some expansion about what is meant there. I think that's a given, but we were definitely going to look into further options, and I don't see that in this business plan.
I think that's correct, sir. We're concentrating at the moment on looking at how we're going to get an SPV for the delivery of these services. Once that SPV is set up, if members agree, we can add other facilities on. At the moment, we're looking at the major facilities, which was the major point of the budget process. but I do accept that we will develop that as time goes on. I can amend that slightly to reflect that for the councillor.
Very much. Can we move on to the recommendations? As to agree that the Community Customer Service Business Plan for 2015 to 18 attached at the appendix, including the targets proposed for indicators and dates for projects, subject to any additions and amendments at the meeting. And 2, note the arrangements for performance monitoring and reporting set out paragraphs 3.4 to 3.8. Mr. Geddes?
I have no problems with either recommendation, sir, but can we perhaps amend it somewhat to take into account the comments I made earlier, Chair, about paragraph 3.3, please?
I think all the comments have been taken on board. I think that's incumbent in the first recommendation in any case. Thank you. 5, strategic planning delivery of community safety. This is the annual, the results for the annual community safety survey, and it gives members opportunity to review the strategic commission to know how the community safety fund has been allocated across the region. We have Ailsa Freeman and Shona Henderson with us today to answer any specific queries. Anything you want to add to the report, ladies?
Good morning. The community safety survey questions were changed this year to focus on the priorities for tackling antisocial behaviour and to obtain feedback on the community safety team, which has been established since April 2013. The results of that are contained in Appendix 1. Work is already ongoing to address some of the issues highlighted by the survey, particularly in regard to the visibility of patrols and their priorities in tackling all aspects of antisocial behaviour. And area-based reports will be presented to area committees in July, which will provide a further breakdown of the survey. The performance information regarding the team for 2014-15 is contained within Appendix 2 of the report, and this will be used in conjunction with the results of the annual survey to develop local area-based action plans to ensure the maximum impact on reducing incidents of antisocial behaviour. In Appendix 3 of the report, that's the first round of applications to the Community Safety Fund, which closed on the 30th September 2014 and were presented to area committees in January and March of this year. A total of 23 applications were submitted, 18 applications were approved, 4 were rejected and 1 was withdrawn by the applicant. And the total amount awarded so far is just over £31,000. Further details of the applications and awards are detailed in Appendix 3, and the second round of applications will be presented to area committees for consideration in July. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm obviously concerned about some of these results in the survey. I know the community safety team are working hard across the region. They're very overstretched across Dumfries and Galloway, but we need to raise the profile across the region. I think we need to be looking in about better communication through the local press, through community councils, building up better links to the community councils. I know I've contacted the community safety team on a regular basis. I've had very, very good results of them. But I'm concerned we need to spread the good message out of the hard work across the region. If you look at some of the things that complaints I receive on a regular basis in North West Dumfries, we've still got problems with dog fouling, litter, syringes lying about. I know you're getting on top of it, but I feel we need a stiffer strategy across the region to deal with some of these things. And I think another question I'd like to ask: how many actual members of the community safety team do you have on a weekend across Dumfries and Galloway? I know you've got holiday periods. Maybe a member of the team might be off sick. So how many members are on, say, last weekend, just for letting elected members know?
Could I just say, I can give you that information after the meeting. I don't think it helps us if people know how many people are operating at any one time. I think if you want to know that, give you that at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I can take your point.
You know what I mean? There's no point in the public knowing how many folk are out there, because if they think there's only one person out there over the whole weekend, the whole region, then
in Police Scotland will be the same ways with that as well.
The rest, Ailsa?
With regard to the image and profile and the visibility of the team and the communicating with the public, we are developing a communication strategy right now to move this forward and to raise the profile in a more structured manner, if you like, and we'll be using all channels from social media through to school visits to community groups. So yeah, but that's currently being developed at the moment. Again, was planned already but has been reinforced by the results of the survey.
Thank you. I recognise your hard work. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Certainly the officers are very good at attending community council meetings and informing community councils, and I think they've got to play a role in ensuring that communities are aware of the community officers and what their role is. But I just wonder that there's a balance to be achieved between the officers being able to do their jobs in regards to catching regular people who allow their dogs to fill and so on, and sometimes going around in day-glow jackets is not the best way to achieve that. But I wonder whether it was worth suggesting perhaps that the vehicles that the community officers actually travel in have got information on the side, because I think the roads pothole department have now got branding, and they're certainly more, the community are far more aware of the pothole team going out and inspecting potholes. I just wonder whether the same could be done for the community officers, whether their vans maybe had some sort of branding and telephone numbers on to highlight they're actually in the community, but not to potentially reduce their ability to catch fly tippers or dog fillers or whatever.
Councillor, that's exactly what we're looking at the moment. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago to look at different designs for getting the vans and the cars liveried through advertising the phone number and the community safety team's presence, along with extra high-vis patrols that are going on at the moment. So we're looking at that just now and just waiting on getting the designs, choosing them, and then we will get the vehicles noted up after that.
Thanks very much indeed, sir. My question relates, Chair, to page 106 of 114, and it's the graphs, etc., talking about antisocial behaviour referrals. And reference, Chair, is made to the reduction and enforcement measures, instances, and also in enforcement measures due largely to DGHP now processing their own antisocial behaviour orders. Now, it's not for discussion here today as to whether or not we might have been able to work better, as it were, and had more of an interface. But it would be of interest to me to have some indication of how both teams interface. For instance, my understanding, Chair, if I'm correct, is that DGHP's staff deal only with DGHP's tenants and their families. And I've had instances in the past, albeit not in the recent past, where I've felt that that has not necessarily been conducive to effective cooperation in solving the problems complained about. So I would be interested in a response to that, sir. And also, would it be worthwhile perhaps in the future, and maybe as a precursor to asking for a review of the current method of operation between both the Council and DGHP, to get some form of statistical information and some form of amalgamated figures? Because I personally feel, sir, that we should be revisiting this. We should be beating a path to the RSL's door, with a view to revisiting this and getting a more effective, method of operation, worked out between both organisations. Grateful, Chair.
Councillor, the community safety team do work in partnership with DGHP, but if the complainer and the perpetrator are both DGHP tenants, then they are the lead agency in that, and they would deal with it unless they required our assistance for a specific reason. So we do still work in partnership, and DGHP do provide stats on a 6-monthly basis for a strategic assessment as well, and that quantifies all the complaints that they've received and the nature of the complaints, and then they feed in to the strategy group as well, who produce those figures through the strategic assessment.
With your leave, Chair, I'm grateful. Yeah, thanks for the response. But I feel, on the face of it, Chair, that there must surely be potential benefits of economy of scale to be derived at, by looking at a more holistic, for want of a better term, way of operating and providing this service. And I would like to think, as elected members, Chair, and this is not any criticism, certainly not of our own staff, or indeed of DGHP's staff either, but I think we should be looking at the possibility of giving strategic guidance and having this reviewed. Thank you.
we're always keen to move things forward. The cooperation goes across all of the safety agencies, police, ourselves, DGHP, other RSLs, and anybody else who's got an involvement. I think the issue for Councillor Geddes is close with cooperation. We'll certainly look at that. The issue, I think, relates to the processing of the antisocial behaviour orders. Previously, the council processed antisocial behaviour orders on behalf, i.e. take them through the courts. DGHP now do that in their own right, rather than expect the council or anticipate that the council will do it. It has made things slightly different insofar as some of the DGHP tenants are concerned, but I can speak to Councillor Geddes offline on that. DGHP have other areas that they can use in terms of antisocial behaviour orders. They're not just dependent on ASBs.
Yeah, Chair, it's on the same subject, and I hear what Shona's saying, where there are two tenants, perhaps both, or would be both of the same RSL. But that does not excuse the council in terms of its responsibility under domestic noise or indeed environmental protection. The Environmental Act places a responsibility on the council. So it's not just, in my opinion, entirely correct to say that it's an RSL's responsibility and we only come in when we are asked. Indeed, it may be challenged and could be challenged in the court. So the issue here for me is that we've got a correct strategic approach to this, and also that it's operating at an operational level and that we're all cooperating. For example, the police could be called out to an incident that is regarded as a domestic issue and there is no criminal intent or offence, and then can walk away. Now that's the deployment of officers at that level, and I hear what Alex is saying in terms of everybody working together, but then it's put back to the RSL for resolution, and a lot within the strategy, there is very little talk of remedy in terms of how the issue is going to be resolved. So I think there is a need, as Alex says, to actually hone in on this and see how are we dealing with it. Because if we look at page 104 of 14, there is an increase from 2013-14 to 2014-15 of domestic noise. And we, in my opinion, from what I have seen, there is very little equipment that the RSL may have in terms of monitoring or rather recording the domestic noise and whether there is an issue there. And that's held with the council's environmental department, and therefore there's got to be this gathering of evidence. Is there an issue here? And if there is an issue here, what's the resolution whereby, we go back to remedy? So I think it does need serious scrutiny in terms of how the various agencies work together, particularly in noise, where there is an increase, Chair. So on that subject, I don't think we're getting it right in respect of the complaints and indeed the increased activity of noise complaints as we are seeing here. And coming back to, and it's no matter of seeing how many people are on duty at a certain time. I think that we've also got to look at the duration of the service. A lot of these areas do not have community wardens in their area, and community wardens are expected to do more and more over a wider area. And in a lot of occasions, there is no weekend service available. So I think that we've got to look at it not just as a daytime or 10 to 10 in the evening and nothing at weekends. I think we've got to look at the service and how we deliver that service so it is over a duration of as near to 24 hours as we possibly can make within budget constraints. So there are many issues in here in terms of how we're tackling this problem. And I would like to think, as Alistair asked the question, that we have an opportunity to review the service and to look at the way that the RSLs are cooperating with the council, and what is the council's responsibility under law, under the legislation that exists, both the antisocial behaviour legislation and the environmental enforcement legislation.
Councillor, I'll start with your point about no weekend cover. The staff do work over a shift pattern 7 days a week, so there is weekend cover there. Officially, the shift pattern can start at 8 in the morning and finish latest at 10 o'clock at night, but there is flexibility in there. And in the last previous month, we have actually had staff coming in to start at 6 o'clock in the morning for a specific issue, to target that issue. So there is the flexibility there, and it's the same after 10 o'clock at night. If it's for a specific issue that we have enough intelligence to deal with, then we will extend that shift pattern as well. So there is flexibility throughout that. The domestic noise stats that appear in the report are specific Police Scotland stats. And the reason it could be for the increase is the change in the mechanism that they report with now. It used to be the image system within Dumfries and Galloway, and when we changed to Police Scotland, it changed into SCOMIS. Unfortunately, the council staff no longer have access to that system, and that was a decision that was taken by Police Scotland at the time. Previously, we did have access to image, but we no longer have that either. But we're still lucky enough to have 2 seconded police officers within the team who provide all this information as well and do the research on both systems as they're both still live. So that could be why there's an increase. It's a better way of reporting, basically, than it was previously in Police Scotland.
Thank you. Just on that last point, I mean, that really doesn't sound very joined up, does it? I'm afraid. I wonder if it's something that we feel is important enough to take forward to, and I don't know whether the staff would think it is of sufficient importance that we should be trying to get that to happen. Chairman, the point I was actually going to raise was the public's view of the relative importance of things that are going wrong in their lives. On page 82, table 2, and to ask about the issue of vehicle nuisance and obstructive parking. I don't know whether this is to do with neighbours parking in somewhere where they don't want the neighbour to park, or whether it's rather more along the lines of people parking on pavements. I wonder if I could have some help on that, because I've certainly noticed an increase in people parking on pavements. And in essence, I think that's what that's saying, that people believe that their vehicle is more important than pedestrians. And it's not a good message to be sending out.
Yes, we do receive complaints from neighbours about parking in front of their drives and things like that, but we don't actually have the authority to deal with that. It is a matter for Police Scotland, and as such, we would pass it to them. Obviously, with the cessation of traffic wardens, it has caused an issue in the towns because they're not a dedicated staff, but Police Scotland are still responsible for on-street parking, and anything that we do receive regarding that, we will pass on to Police Scotland. The community safety team are only responsible for the council-owned car parks. So that the remit of on-street parking on pavements does still fall under Police Scotland.
Could I come back then just to ask, so although the public is saying that vehicle nuisance and obstructive parking is the third most annoying thing that they come forward with, we have no locus in that?
Not on-street parking, no. The only authority we have is to deal with the council-owned car parks.
I suggest to Mrs Maitland, if she sees any instance of people parking, I mean, I do it myself, and I'm well known to the station in Govan that answers all the calls. If I see folk parking bus lanes, parking yellow lines, I phone the police, and it's quite successful. It's a nice wee earner for them as well. And in certain areas, it's having a good effect in stopping people parking. So I'd recommend phone 101, take a note of the number, pass the number on as well, do your public duty, keep the police working. Councillor Martin.
Just to raise, that point was raised at the Community Council meeting. I was at last night, and the community policeman says if it's causing obstruction, they will take action. But if it's just partly on the pavement and not causing obstruction, they will more or less let it go.
Yeah, just getting back, first of all, to Alistair's point, it's really maybe just to give maybe some reassurance and also to support what Sean has said. On the number of occasions when I've had antisocial behaviour issues where the lead agency has been DGHP and either myself or the complainant has not been happy with the response or the actions being taken, when I've contacted the community safety team, antisocial behaviour officers, they've actually been able to go in there and work with DGHP. So that, from my experience, has happened, and the relationship between the two seems to be quite a healthy one. In relation to the high-vis patrols, I'm for that as long as it's not just a purely PR exercise and there's something behind doing that. There's been a little bit of negative press, but what we don't want us to do is a lot of the things that are done by the community safety team is kind of covert by nature. So therefore, really, to operate at their most effectiveness is the need to actually have that kind of level of cover rather than actually walking about and being seen. But there is a place for it, but I think it just has to be measured. And then the final point as well, because obviously we've had reports through area committee, one of the suggestions that I put forward, and certainly some of the other members, is that part of it, I think we've mentioned about working with the community councils and the councillors, etc. And I'm just wondering if it's been taken forward, is that what we kind of asked for was, if it was possible, like the police do at community councils, is like a high-level summary report from the community wardens, and it could be per region, so one for Andale and Eskdale and Estill, etc., that could be circulated to the community councils and the councillors, just highlighting what's been done in that last month. Because I think part of it is, it will also raise the profile, but also show just exactly that there's a lot of work being done, but a lot of it is kind of behind the scenes.
It's something we're developing at the moment following that committee to look into, to be able to produce figures, obviously, for the areas concerned. We, over a period of 2 years, we'd written to all community councils offering presentations from the community safety team, and the uptake in that was not as big as we had expected, but it has improved, and we will be later and again offering this facility to provide the stats when we do the presentations. Some of them we attend on a regular basis if we have the staff available, but for any new community councils that have not had a presentation, they will all be lettered again and offer that service. The high-vis patrols as well, yes, there is an instruction out at the moment, but there is a discretionary element involved in that. If again we're working on intelligence where high-vis would not be appropriate, then that's accommodated.
Can I say, as far as covert stuff's concerned, sir, the high level, the high visibility stuff, very, very, very useful. Insofar as covert surveillance is concerned, we have to abide with the requirements of the RIPSA legislation, and we do that on a regular basis when it's necessary.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just on the back of that, I think this was raised at the DG First committee recently as well, just about the discretionary element of being able to remain covert when it was operationally necessary. My question was actually about car parking tickets issued, and I was just wanting to ask how many were in Dumfries and how many were in Stranraer? That's page 111, just for reference.
Apologies, Councillor, I don't have that information in front of me at the moment, but I can certainly get back to you, if that would be okay. Thanks.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. I'm referring to page 89. It's the survey results. And I appreciate that this is an attempt to capture a sort of flavour of the concerns. My question really, well, I'll make a statement first of all, because 22 out of every 100 people here are coming from non-owner occupier. That's out of 623 responses. I think the question I'm going to ask you here is, how can we engage with better with the vast majority of citizens who have not taken part in this survey? Because there's a danger here. We put a lot of effort into things that are really meaningful to 600 people, but don't really matter to another 120,000. And we need evidence of that. Yep.
Yeah, that was what obviously that's what's come out through the survey, and we're looking at how we distribute the survey, how we engage with registered social landlords, for example, how we engage with our partnership support officers, community councils. We do put hard copies out. It's not just it's majority of it's online through SurveyMonkey, but we do need to review the contacts that we're having and to ensure that we're getting a proportionate representation. And we have identified that, and we will be looking as to put a plan in process for the next survey, which will be towards the end of the year, to ensure we get wider representation.
Thanks, Chair. Seems quite a while now, but I sat committee in here when there was it was passed to put a charge on white goods and bulky uplifts, and I know that that's put a bit of pressure on, especially in my area, on the team. I was just wondering, at the time it was a cost-saving exercise. I was just wondering if it still is, because the majority of times if anybody's got goods like that, they just throw it in a football park or a field. And you might not think this is pertinent, but I think it is. We have a great problem with this. I mean, we try and sort it. The team can't always sort it out because there's so many areas of land owned by other people transferred to DGHP. And it might be Home Scotland tenants that's throwing it out, but DGHP, it's on their land. I was just wondering if there any way to do to fix this problem, because it is a big problem in my area, and we've got a situation where we have three-piece suites and washing machines sitting in football parks for 2 or 3 weeks because nobody wants to lift it. I just want to know if Shona sees that as a problem elsewhere and how we can maybe look at it to see if we can get things shifted quicker, because it's not nice to see in a village all this stuff lying about, and folk are still not paying the charge. So the council's got to be paid to come and get it anyway, or whoever's lifting it, there's still a charge there because they've got to come and lift it anyway. I just want to know if Shona sees that as a problem, that more and more people are just throwing their stuff out into fields and that.
Councillor, I don't think the problem's got worse recently. I think when it first started, it's probably pretty stagnant at the moment. We receive most of the complaints regarding the fly tipping, just in case we can investigate it. But obviously with white goods, there's never any evidence to be able to identify who the perpetrator was. So we do pass it on to the council department and DG First that will uplift, and they do have maps in place to decide who the landowner is, because it is their responsibility to have it removed. If it's not done within a few days, we will chase it up if it's a DGHP or a Home Scotland property. So we do attempt to get it removed as quickly as possible. But obviously that relies on their putting their request through to have it if it's privately owned property or DGHP. But the council do their very best to collect it as soon as it's reported.
Sorry, just on that point, yeah. I mean, we're not landowners, but we're tenant farmers, and we do have a fairly significant amount of stuff dumped on either the periphery of the farm or in the fields. People bother to drive 3-4 miles out of the village to dump it on our fields. So why on earth are they not driving 4 or 5 miles to the tip? And I think that that's the message that we have to get out there, that if people have got vehicles to dump them on my farm, they've damn well got vehicles to dump them at, the tip for nothing. And it's a mindset that we have to get over, that this cluttering landscape because you can't be bothered going to the tip is just completely unacceptable. And we've certainly had wardens along to our community councils, and hopefully the press will pick up on that, because I don't mean to be unkind to people who don't have that facility and do literally manhandle it to a playing field or something like that, but the majority I see have been taken by vehicle. And that to me is just actually pig ignorance, and really that message needs to get out as well. With enforcement, preferably.
This was obviously a nationwide problem, that people were actually putting effort in to stock their cars up, and we couldn't understand why they weren't just going to the legalised tips for it. But I think that was why the decision was taken at government to increase the fine. The fine for fly tipping was £80, and then on the 1st of April last year, we're up to £200. And we have issued, obviously you'll see from the stats, a few tickets for that. So they certainly should be. The sites recently changed their opening hours, and that was well advertised locally in all the papers so that people did know that the hours were changing. And it is still illegal to dump anything while the site is closed. You're not even allowed to dump it at the gates, and there is CCTV there that we will use for court purposes for prosecutions.
Chair, I think that particular questions should be addressed to DG first, and I'll talk to the director and send information, hopefully, out to local communities that information can actually go out and be advertised to say that it is free at the local recycling facilities, to make sure that they can do that. Why drive 4 miles out into the countryside when you can drive 2 miles in some cases to the local recycling area? So I'll ask DG first, Director, to send out something in that vein.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's certainly an education thing. People are only dumping them there because they think they're going to get a charge when they take it to the tip. I don't think it's necessarily anything to do with opening hours either. My question was on abandoned vehicles. That there seems to be a big rise in the number of abandoned vehicles. How does the council deal with that, and is there any cost implications to us if these have got to be removed and disposed of?
Yes, there is a cost implication. We have contractors that have to go out and retrieve, and at the moment we've had 2 in the past week that we've had to look into deeper, because obviously that is a cost to the council, but it's because the price of scrap metal has reduced significantly recently, and that is why there has been more abandoned vehicles.
Is there any investigations done into the owners of these vehicles? At some point, there would be a last registered owner or somebody who last taxed the vehicle. Is there any police work done to try and identify who the owners are?
Luckily, we have access to the DVLE system, so we can check that ourselves, and we certainly do our very best to track down the owner. And then there's notice periods of different lengths depending on the circumstances, and they will, whenever possible, if we cannot trace the owner of the vehicle, it just doesn't exist basically in DVLA, then we have to incur the cost for that. But if we can trace them, yes, they will be billed for the removal of the vehicle.
Yeah, Chair, already there's been a number of members referred to dog fouling, and indeed it comes top of the table again, or rank 1 of 8. And if we look at page 93 of the survey, where it refers to what types, then it's something like 65% of those surveyed see dog fouling as a major issue, as indeed it's raging in social media in the Stranraer area anyway, and I would assume from the remarks made that it's throughout the whole of the region. So it is high in at least the 600 that were surveyed, and I would say most of the people within the communities that see it. Then we look at page 95 of the report and we compare. And this is a question of how often have you seen your community safety team operating in your area? And 75% have never seen, notwithstanding that they have high vis and so forth. So I think that there is a disconnect between the community safety team and the community in terms of some of the issues, particularly in dog fouling, as a major issue. And I appreciate that the community safety teams are carrying out their duties, and indeed there was a change to make them also environmental, or rather enforcement officers. But there is a fear, and there was a fear expressed at the time, that we may lose the concept of community wardens working with the community, and they became the conduit to some of the wider issues. Because we have it in our area, and the question was asked, in terms of how many car parking tickets have been issued in comparison with Dumfries and Stranraer, and the reports that we got was that they far outweighed the number of tickets issued in Stranraer as against or compared with Dumfries, and that's even with the population, etc. So I think we've got to look at, when you look at this report, as to what the priorities are for the community, and so that we don't lose, and I've heard language used, and it's almost as if we're, the community safety team are taking on the mantle of the police in some of the language that has been used. And I would hope we can not lose sight of this whole concept, this how we introduced community wardens working with the community at some of the issues that face this. So in that respect, looking at the survey, which I find interesting, much better if we get to more people. But nevertheless, when we come to the recommendations, that as an area committee, we are able to set the priorities of the community safety team, and reflecting indeed the 65% of those surveyed is on dog fouling. And I think we've got to get the community wardens working more with the community and maybe less patrolling car parks, is my opinion. So in that respect, Chair, I hope that when we come to the recommendations that we can refer this matter back so that we can prioritise the work of the community safety teams, so that they're starting to address the issues of the community, and they may get back to the concept of being there as community wardens, working with the community and less of the enforcement, while enforcement is an issue of some priority.
I think you've got to remember, if a community warden is out on patrol, then if he catches somebody dog fouling, that's fine. He may well notice that a dog has fouled there, but he's no way of knowing who the perpetrator was. Same with litter. If he catches somebody dropping litter, he can capture them. If he doesn't see who drops it, can he capture them? If he's happened to be walking through a car park, and the car's not parked properly or has overstayed its time, he's quite within his rights to issue a ticket. So they should be patrolling on a basis. And it comes back to the original question asked by Finlay about the high vis. And I think the fact, if you make the vehicle high vis within an area, there are times, it's like when we had community policemen. I remember we run community policemen, he was seen every day, particularly in the summertime. He'd wander about the streets in Trequeer, talk to other old buddies out in their garden, have a cup of tea with them. He got rather portly, almost as bad as me, because you drink too much tea and eat too many chocolate biscuits. But I mean, I'm still getting phone calls at night time about kids racketing about at 10 o'clock at night. New community policeman comes along. I'm no longer getting any phone calls from the community about kids racketing about. All the old buddies are moaning, never see a community policeman through the day now. Now, it boils down to two things. Do you want to solve the problem, or do you want the guys to be seen? And the answer is, people want the problem to be solved. People being seen, it's like policemen on the beat. The fact that policemen on the beat doesn't mean you're going to reduce crime. You want to reduce crime, not see coppers wandering about the streets. So it's how you handle it. It's a combination of both. Either catch the perpetrators, or have your high-vis patrols. It's how you meld the both of them to satisfy both ends. Anyway, that, Jonah?
Just very quickly, Chair, to summarise, to reassure members, we are intending to come to each of our 4 area committees to translate the regional survey into a local context, and that will put local members at the heart of prioritising what their local areas are. It may be dog fouling in one particular area, or it may well be that there's one ward that has got a particular issue, and we really want to start to hone in on that and involve elected members about how these resources within our gift can be reallocated to have a bigger impact.
So much. Can we move to recommendations?
Thank you. With the indulgence, we're talking about community policemen sort of wandering about and speaking to folk during the day, which is a good thing, and we know that. But recently, I think in light of the Paris bombings, they've now been instructed that they can only work in pairs. Whereas previously, the community bobby could walk up one side of the high street and back down the other and have a chat. They can't do that unless they're working in pairs. Are we seeing that imposition with our community officers, or are they still allowed to work solo in certain circumstances?
most of the time the officers work in pairs whenever possible, but no, they can, and under certain circumstances, work on their own. Yeah.
And recommendations, find them. Okay. Right. To review the results of annual community safety survey, we've done that. 2.2, review the Performance Community Safety Commission, which is commissioned by Community Customer Services and led by DG First. We've done that. And 2.3, note the allocation of Community Safety Fund across the region. Note.
Chair, on some of the remarks, I'm happy with what Harry's saying, that we refer the issue of prioritisation back to area committees. So I'm quite happy with that. But in terms of the antisocial behaviour, the domestic noise nuisance issue, then to the remarks made by Alex in this, that I would hope we can review how the agencies work together, and that's with the RSLs, police, the council, because it's not a matter of leaving it to an RSL. The council has responsibility under the various acts, the legislation, and I would hope or I would move that we do review how these agencies work together so that we maximise best effect, also looking at the potential or remedy within that, so that we're not just left exposed and culpable for where the council could be cited as not carrying out its responsibilities. So I would like to see a review of that in terms of the multi-agency working together so that we are best affected.
Well, I think Mr. Haswell said that he would talk with the other agencies. At the end of the day, that's all we can do. We can't force the DGHP to agree to do anything with us. And at the end of the day, if DGHP have dealt with their tenants, with their antisocial behaviour team, we ain't going in after that. They've got their team, we've got our team. Certainly shouldn't be any duplication. Alan?
I think that's correct, Chairman. I understand where Councillor Scobie's coming from. We do regularly have team meetings. We do regularly work on an interagency basis. And in fact, while I don't like to get anecdotal, I recall a conversation that Councillor Scobie and I had with the police inspector about how these systems work and how they operate. We have a legal duty in certain circumstances, and we will comply with that legal duty as a local authority. There can be no doubt about that. That's a requirement on us. What I did give Chairman Rowland, try to make policy on the hoof, I did tell Councillor Scobie, and I think in response to Councillor Geddes, that we would look at how the interagency is operating, and perhaps we can incorporate that into the reports that go to area committees, and that might give members at a local level a flavour of how things work at the local level.
Happy to accept that, Chair, that there will be a report rather than perhaps a full review, but that report goes to the area committee as to how the interagencies, multi-agency teams are working and how effective. It is not entirely that it is an RSL. The council has responsibilities and they are there as council taxpayers, and that deals with the social and the private landlords and private owners. So we have a responsibility that we cannot abdicate.
Okay. No further business. Thank you all for attending.